Welcome. Today we're reading the chapter Tarzan's Command of the novel Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. Last time, Blake prepared for a division of supplies and personnel while waiting for his problematic companion, Stimble, to return to camp. Tensions flared as Stimble attempted to exert his authority over the local porters, only to find that his abusive approach had resulted in their refusal to accompany him on the journey back, with most choosing instead to follow Blake. The chapter culminated in the unexpected arrival of Tarzan, who interjected into the situation, confirming Blake's suspicions about Stimble's ill treatment of the men and promising to assist in safely organizing their trek moving forward.
Arrow the lightning. Before dawn the camp was astir, and by the appointed hour the packs were made, and all was in readiness. The porters loitered, awaiting the word that would start the safari upon its eastward journey toward the coast. Blake and Stimble smoked in silence. The foliage of a nearby tree moved to the swaying of a branch, and Tarzan of the Apes dropped lightly into the camp. Exclamations of surprise broke from the lips of the Negroes, surprise clearly tinged with terror. The ape man turned toward them and addressed them in their own dialect. "I am Tarzan of the Apes," he said, "Lord of the Jungle. You have brought white men into my country to kill my people. I am displeased. Those of you who wish to live to return to your villages and your families will listen well and do as Tarzan commands. You," he pointed at the chief headman, "shall accompany the younger white man whom I will permit to make pictures in my country, where and when he will. Select half the men of the safari to accompany the young BW Anna. And you," he addressed another headman, "take those men that remain, and escort the older BW Anna to Railhead in the most direct route and without delay. He is not permitted to hunt, and there will be no killing except for food or self-defense. Do not fail me. Remember always that Tarzan watches, and Tarzan never forgets." He turned then to the white men. "Blake," he said, "the arrangements are made. You may leave when you please with your own safari and go where you please. The question of hunting is left to your own discretion. You are the guest of Tarzan. And you," he addressed Stimble, "will be taken directly out of the country by the shortest route. You will be permitted to carry firearms for use in self-defense. If you abuse this permission, they will be taken away from you. Do not hunt, even for food. Your headman will attend to that." "Now, just hold your horses," blustered Stimble. "If you think I'm going to put up with any such high-handed interference with my rights as an American citizen, you're very much mistaken. Why, I could buy and sell you in your damn jungle 40 times and not know that I'd spent a cent. For God's sake, Blake, tell this poor fool who I am before he gets himself into a lot of trouble." Tarzan turned to the headman he had selected for Stimble. "You may upload and march," he said. "If this white man does not follow you, leave him behind. Take good care of him if he obeys me, and deliver him safely at Railhead. Obey his orders, if they do not conflict with those that I have given you. Go!" A moment later, Stimble's safari was preparing to depart, and, at Tarzan's request, Blake's too was moving out of camp. Stimble swore and threatened, but his men, sullenly ignoring him, filed off into the jungle toward the east. Tarzan had departed, swinging into the trees and disappearing among the foliage, and at last Stimble stood alone in the deserted camp. Thwarted, humiliated, almost frothing with rage, he ran after his men, screaming commands and threats that were ignored. Later in the day, sullen and silent, he marched near the head of the long file of porters and askari, convinced at last that the power of the ape-man was greater than his. But in his heart burned resentment, and in his mind rioted plans for vengeance, plans that he knew were futile. Tarzan, wishing to assure himself that his instructions were being carried out, had swung far ahead and was waiting in the crotch of a tree that overhung the trail along which Stimble must pass. In the distance he could hear the sounds that arose from the marching safari. Along the trail from the opposite direction, something was approaching. The ape-man could not see it, but he knew what it was. Above the treetops, black clouds rolled low, but no air stirred in the jungle. Along the trail came a great, shaggy black man-thing. Tarzan of the Apes hailed it as it came in sight of his arboreal perch. "Bolgani!" he called in low tones. The gorilla stopped. He stood erect upon his hind feet and looked about. "I am Tarzan," said the ape-man. Bolgani grunted. "I am Bolgani," he replied. "The Tarmangani comes," warned Tarzan. "I kill," growled Bolgani. "Let the Tarmangani pass," said Tarzan. "He and his people have many thundersticks. I have sent this Tarmangani out of the jungle. Let him pass. Go a little way from the trail. The stupid Gomangani and the Tarmangani, who is stupider, will pass by without knowing that Tarzan and Bolgani are near. From the darkening sky, distant thunder boomed, and the two beasts looked upward toward the broad field of nature's powers, more savage and destructive than their own. "Pan the thunder hunts in the sky," remarked the ape-man. "Hunts for Usha the wind," said Bolgani. "Presently we shall hear Usha fleeing through the trees to escape." Tarzan viewed the lowering black clouds. Even Kudu the sun fears Pand, hiding his face when Pand hunts. Ara the lightning shot through the sky. To the two beasts it was a bolt from Pand's bow, and the great drops of rain that commenced to fall shortly after was Mita, the blood of Usha the wind, pouring from many a wound. The jungle bent to a great pressure, but as yet there was no other noise than the rolling thunder. The trees whipped back and Usha tore through the forest. The darkness increased. The rain fell in great masses. Leaves and branches hurtled through the air. Trees crashed amongst their fellows. With deafening roars the elements unleashed their pent anger. The beasts cowered beneath the one awe-inspiring power that they acknowledged as supreme. Tarzan crouched in the crotch of a great tree with his shoulders arched against the beating rain. Just off the trail Bolgani squatted in drenched and bedraggled misery. They waited. There was nothing else that they could do. Above them the storm broke again with maniacal fury. The thunder crashed with deafening reverberation. There was a blinding flash of light, and the branch upon which Tarzan squatted sagged and hurtled to the trail beneath. Stunned, the ape-man lay where he had fallen, the great branch partially across his body. As quickly as it had come, the storm departed. Kudu the sun burst through the clouds. Bolgani, dejected and still terrified, remained where he had squatted, motionless and silent. Bolgani had no desire to attract the attention of Pan the Thunder. Soaked with water, cold, furious, Stimble slopped along the slippery, muddy trail. He did not know that his safari was some little distance behind him, for he had forged ahead during the storm while they had taken refuge beneath the trees. At a turn in the trail he came suddenly upon a fallen branch that blocked the way. At first he did not see the body of the man lying beneath it, but when he did he recognized it instantly, and a new hope sprang to life within his breast. With Tarzan dead he could be free to do as he pleased, but was the ape-man dead? Stimble ran forward, and, kneeling, placed an ear to the breast of the prostrate figure. An expression of disappointment crossed his face. Tarzan was not dead. The expression upon Stimble's face changed. A cunning look came into his eyes as he glanced back down the trail. His men were not in sight. He looked quickly about him. He was alone with the unconscious author of his humiliation. He thought he was alone. He did not see the shaggy figure that had silently arisen, as the sound of Stimble's approach had come to its sensitive ears, and was now peering at him through the foliage. Peering at him, and at the silent figure of the ape-man. Stimble drew his hunting knife from its scabbard. He could slip its point into the wild man's heart and run back down the trail. His men would find him waiting for them. Later they would come upon the dead Tarzan, but they would not guess how he had met his end. The ape-man moved consciousness was returning. Stimble realized that he must act quickly, and at the same instant a great hairy arm reached out through the foliage, and a mighty hand closed upon his shoulder. With a screaming curse he turned to look into the hideous face of Bolgani. He tried to strike at the shaggy breast of his antagonist with his hunting knife, but the puny weapon was torn from his grasp and hurled into the bushes. The great yellow fangs were bared against Stimble's throat as Tarzan opened his eyes. "Krieg, ah!" cried the ape-man in warning. Bolgani paused and looked at his fellow beast. "Let him go," said Tarzan. "The Tarmangani would have killed Tarzan," explained the gorilla. Bolgani stopped him. "Bolgani, kill!" he growled horribly. "No!" snapped Tarzan. "Free the Tarmangani." The gorilla released his grasp upon Stimble, just as the first of the hunter's men came in sight of them, and as Bolgani saw the blacks and how numerous they were, his nervousness and irritability increased. "Take to the jungle, Bolgani," said Tarzan. "Tarzan will take care of this Tarmangani and the Gomangani." With a parting growl, the gorilla merged with the foliage and the shadows of the jungle as Tarzan of the Apes faced Stimble and his boys. "You had a close call then, Stimble," said the ape-man. "It is fortunate for you that you didn't succeed in killing me. I was here for two reasons. One was to see that you obeyed my instructions, and the other to protect you from your men. I did not like the way they eyed you in camp this morning. It would not be a difficult thing to lose you in the jungle, you know, and that would put a period to you as surely as poison or a knife. I felt a certain responsibility for you because you are a white man, but you have just now released me from whatever obligation racial ties may have influenced me to acknowledge. I shall not kill you, Stimble, as you deserve, but from now on you may reach the coast on your own, and you will doubtless discover that one cannot make too many friends in the jungle or afford a single unnecessary enemy." He wheeled upon Stimble's black boys. Tarzan of the Apes goes his way. You will not see him again perhaps. Do your duty by this white man, as long as he obeys the word of Tarzan, but see that he does not hunt." With this final admonition, the ape man swung into the lower branches and was gone. When Stimbul, after repeatedly questioning his men, discovered that Tarzan had practically assured them that they would see no more of him, he regained much of his former assurance and egotistical bluster. Once more he was the leader of men, shouting at the blacks in a loud tone, cursing them, ridiculing them. He thought that it impressed them with his greatness. He believed that they were simple people, whom he could deceive into thinking that he was not afraid of Tarzan, and by flaunting Tarzan's commands, win their respect. Now that Tarzan had promised not to return, Stimbul felt safer in ignoring his wishes, and so it befell that just before they reached a camping ground, Stimbul came upon an antelope, and without an instant's hesitation fired and killed it. It was a sullen camp that Stimbul made that night. The men gathered in groups and whispered, "He has shot an antelope, and Tarzan will be angry with us," said one. "He will punish us," said a head man. "The BW Anna is a bad man," said another. "I wish he was dead. We may not kill him. Tarzan has said that. If we leave him in the jungle, he will die. Tarzan told us to do our duty. He said to do it as long as the bad BW Anna obeyed the commands of Tarzan. He has disobeyed them. Then we may leave him." Stimbul, exhausted by the long march, slept like a log. When he awoke, the sun was high. He shouted for his boy. There was no response. Again he shouted, and louder, adding an oath. No one came. There was no sound in camp. "The lazy niggers," he grumbled. "They'll step a little livelier when I get out there." He arose and dressed, but as he was dressing, the silence of the camp came to impress him as something almost menacing, so that he hastened to be through and out of the tent. As he stepped into the open, the truth was revealed at almost the first quick glance about. Not a human being was in sight, and all but one of the packs containing provisions were gone. He had been deserted in the heart of Africa. His first impulse was to seize his rifle and start after the blacks, but second thought impressed him with the danger of such procedure, and convinced him that the last thing he should do would be to place himself again in the power of these men who had demonstrated that they felt no compunction in abandoning him to almost certain death. If they wanted to be rid of him, they could easily find even a quicker means if he returned and forced himself upon them again. There was but a single alternative, and that was to find Blake and remain with him. He knew that Blake would not abandon him to death in the jungle. The blacks had not left him without provisions, nor had they taken his rifle or ammunition. But the difficulty that now confronted Stimbul was largely in the matter of transportation for his food. There was plenty of it to last many days, but he knew that he could not carry it through the jungle together with his rifle and ammunition. To remain where the food was would be equally futile. Blake was returning to the coast by another route. The ape man had said that he would not follow Stimbul's safari farther. It might be years, therefore, before another human being chanced along this little used game trail. He knew that he and Blake were now separated by about 2 marches, and if he traveled light and Blake did not march too rapidly, he might hope to overtake him inside a week. Perhaps Blake would find good camera hunting soon and make a permanent camp. In that case, Stimbul would find him even more quickly. He felt better when he had definitely decided upon a plan of action, and after a good breakfast he made up a small pack of provisions, enough to last him a week, filled his belts and pockets with ammunition, and started off along the back trail. It was easy going, for the trail of the day before was plain, and this was the 3rd time that Stimbul had been over it, so he had no difficulty in reaching the camp at which he and Blake had parted company. As he entered the little clearing early in the afternoon, he determined to keep on and cover as much ground on Blake's trail as he could before dark, but for a few minutes he would rest. As he sat down with his back against the bole of a tree, he did not notice a movement of the tops of a clump of jungle grasses a few yards distant, and if he had, he would, doubtless, have attached no importance to the matter. Finishing a cigarette, Stimbul arose, rearranged his pack, and started off in the direction Blake's men had taken early the preceding morning. But he had covered but a yard or two when he was brought to a sudden halt by an ominous growl that arose from a little clump of jungle grasses close in front of him. Almost simultaneously the fringing grasses parted, and there appeared in the opening the head of a great black-maned lion. With a scream of fear, Stimbul dropped his pack, threw aside his rifle, and started on a run for the tree beneath which he had been sitting. The lion, itself somewhat surprised, stood for an instant watching him, and then started in pursuit at an easy lope. Stimbul, casting an affrighted glance rearward, was horrified. The lion seemed so close, and the tree so far away. If distance lends enchantment to the view, proximity may also at times have its advantage. In this instance, it served to accelerate the speed of the fleeing man to a most surprising degree, and though he was no longer young, he clawed his way to the lower branches of the tree with speed, if not with grace, that would have done justice to a trained athlete. Nor was he an instant too speedy. Numa's raking talons touched his boot and sent him swarming up among the higher branches, where he clung weak and panting, looking down into the snarling visage of the carnivore. For a moment Numa growled up at him, and then, with a coughing grunt, turned away and strode majestically in the direction of the clump of grasses from which he had emerged. He stopped to sniff at the pack of provisions Stimble had discarded, and, evidently piqued by the man's scent clinging to it, cuffed at it angrily. It rolled to one side, and Numa stepped back, eyeing it warily. Then, with a growl, he leaped upon it and commenced to maul the insensate thing, ripping and tearing until its contents were scattered about upon the ground. He bit into tins and boxes until scarcely an article remained intact, while Stimble crouched in the tree and watched the destruction of his provisions, utterly helpless to interfere. A dozen times he cursed himself for having thrown away his rifle, and even more frequently he vowed vengeance. He consoled himself, however, with the realization that Blake could not be far away, and that with Blake there were ample provisions, which could be augmented by trading and hunting. When the lion left, he would descend and follow Blake's trail. Numa, tired of the contents of the pack, resumed his way toward the long grass, but again his attention was distracted, this time by the thunderstick of the Tarmangani. The lion smelled of the discarded rifle, pawed it and finally picked it up between his jaws. Stimble looked on, horrified. What if the beast damaged the weapon? He would be left without means of defense, or for obtaining food. "Drop it!" shouted Stimble. "Drop it!" Numa, ignoring the ravings of the despised man-thing, strode into his lair, carrying the rifle with him. That afternoon and night spelled an eternity of terror for Wilbur Stimble. While daylight lasted, the lion remained in the nearby patch of grass, effectually deterring the unhappy man from continuing his search for Blake's camp, and after night fell no urge whatever could have induced Stimble to descend to the paralyzing terrors of the jungle night, even had he known that the lion had departed, and no sounds had apprised him of the near presence of danger, but sounds did apprise him. From shortly after dark until nearly dawn, a perfect bedlam of howls and growls and coughs and grunts and barks arose from directly beneath him, as there had been held a convention of all the horrid beasts of the jungle at the foot of the tree that seemed at best an extremely insecure sanctuary. When morning came, the jungle lay silent and peaceful about him, and only torn canvas and empty cans bore mute evidence to the feast of the hyenas that had passed into jungle history. Numa had departed, leaving the remains of the kill upon which he had lain as the piece de resistance of the hyenian banquet for which Stimble had furnished the hors d'oeuvre. Stimble, trembling, descended. Through the jungle, wild-eyed, startled by every sound, scurried a pitiful figure of broken, terror-stricken old age. Few could have recognized in it Wilbur Stimble, of Stimble & Company, Brokers, New York.
Did you enjoy today's chapter of Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle? Why not subscribe and ring the bell?